Sweet 16 Thursday and Friday. Every team a 6 seed or better, except for Arkansas way over there on the right. They're a 10 seed. First time in almost 20 years that we don't have an 11 seed or higher in the Sweet 16.
Do you laugh when people call them a Cinderella?
They're not a Cinderella.
I know they're not a Cinderella.
I don't laugh. I get mad.
Okay.
That's Amanda Guerra. I'm Chris Hassel. We've got Sportsline's Tim Doyle with us. Timmy, we're going to pick every game here in the Sweet 16. We're going to go in order of tip-off, okay? So we're starting with the early game on Thursday, and this might be the most intriguing matchup of the tournament. It's BYU and Bama, first team to 90 wins.
Yeah, well said. This is going to be a high-scoring affair. Defense is optional with Alabama, but BYU, they have the model. They make the new age sauce. They have a GM. They hired a former NBA assistant, and they have some fantastic talent. If you've not seen Richie Saunders play, he is an amazing talent. They got big guys down low that have been awesome, Triore, Keita. But the guy that I absolutely love, and I mean love, and he's the best pro prospect in this game, is Igor Demon. Now, he's 6'9", shoots the three. He can put the ball on the floor. I'm picking BYU to win this game. Even though they are underdog in this spot, I think BYU can go toe-to-toe, and they are, Hassel, the first team to get to 95. My only problem here is I feel like your name, when it's Igor, I feel like you're like this, hello. Like, I feel like you're like, I've never met an Igor that's not like, oh, hello, everybody. Like, so I like BYU in this spot.
Wasn't that Young Frankenstein, except it was Igor, not Igor? Neither one of you are watching Mel Brooks movies. All right, that's okay. Both of you need to watch that movie. Let's go to the game after that. Maryland going up against Florida here. Florida favored by 6.5. Both of these teams needed late comebacks in order to advance. Tim, why are you stressed out so much?
I picked Florida in my bracket. I think Maryland could easily win this game. This was like one of those that I sat there and I said, she loves me not. Like, I went back and forth and back and forth. I think Florida's the best team in college basketball. That it looked like that against UConn. And Maryland, well, I'm sure if you're a Colorado State fan, you're saying, well, they're even lucky to be in this place. Queen traveled. He might have traveled, but I'm happy the ref didn't call it then. I'm picking Florida to advance. I think their backcourt is simply better than Maryland's backcourt, but not by much. Walter Clayton Jr. is sensational. Elijah Martin, Will Richard. They also have Alex Condon. Condon versus Derek Queen's going to be an awesome matchup. I think whoever comes out of this game can win the national championship. Florida is my pick, so I'm picking them here.
I just checked. I do have Maryland advancing in this game.
I do too. I have Maryland to the Final Four.
I do.
Now,
I do as well.
I don't necessarily feel great about that right now.
Oh no, I lied. I don't.
What?
I have them winning this game.
Okay.
And going to the Elite Eight, just not the Final Four.
Let's go to the favorites to win the tournament going in and right now, the Duke Blue Devils against Caleb Love in Arizona. And Tim, Duke fans can't wait to get him back because he ruined Coach K's final home game and his final game period in the Final Four when he was at North Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, Caleb Love is one of those guys. Arizona's playing in this game because of him. He can shoot you in a game. He can certainly shoot you out of a game. He's going to have an all-world performance. What does that mean? I don't know, 30, 35 points. He's capable of that. It feels like he's been in college forever. It's been 5 years exactly for Caleb Love. It's hard to pick against Duke. I think everybody has Duke advancing. I wonder, Hassel, Amanda, does anybody have a perfect bracket? Because with all these higher seeds going, you know how no one ever has a perfect bracket? I feel like a lot of people, I have all my Final Four teams alive. I feel like a lot of people's bracket is still intact.
Yeah, I got 6 of my Elite Eight and all 4 Final Four. Is there one perfect bracket remaining? There was going into late Sunday. There was one in the whole country. There was one. And Warren Buffett finally had to pay out his millions. He kind of tweaked his formula, but he had to pay out $1 million to a couple of his employees because they had a good first round.
A good first round, which is
not perfect, but good.
Okay, a good first round. It's fine. No, there are no more remaining brackets. And I did look up. Nobody has ever had a perfect bracket.
No, it's impossible.
Okay, that's fair enough. Pretty much impossible. So that game tipping off at 9:39 at 10:09 Eastern. Again, ridiculous start time here. We get Arkansas going up against Texas Tech. Texas Tech favored by 5.5 in this one. Arkansas, the only remaining double-digit seed. Look, I'd love for this upset, Tim, because I don't feel like we're going to get many, so I would like this one.
I can see it. What a great win by Arkansas, right? All season long, we talked about St. John's and their three-point shooting. Will it come back to bite them? It's ironic it was against John Calipari because he had a team in 2008, Amanda, that did not shoot free throws well. I'm talking about the Memphis Tigers and Derrick Rose, and everyone in the tournament was like, one of these games, they're not going to miss some free throws. It just happened to be a national championship game, and they blew the national title. So it was ironic that St. John's lost to Arkansas. I'm picking Texas Tech here. I think Grant McCasland, their head coach, could coach Kentucky or UCLA or North Carolina. He's that good of a coach. Chris and I called games when he was on the sidelines in North Texas, and we were just waiting for him to get a big opportunity. He's gotten a big opportunity. He has a superstar in JT Toppin. I think Texas Tech's going to be ready to rock and roll. Give me Texas Tech here.
All right, those are the Thursday games. Let's go to Friday. The first one up is the big one for you, Timmy. It's Ole Miss, the Fighting Frauds, against Michigan State. At this point, are you rooting for this to continue, or do you just want it to end?
I am in now a win-win situation, okay? Congratulations to Ole Miss. You're in the Sweet 16. I did not see that coming. I learned a lot about myself to no longer use the F word, Amanda. No more using the F word, which is fraud. I have Michigan State advancing in this region to the Final Four. So I have them beating their next opponent as well. But it's becoming the point, if Ole Miss wins this game, I'm going to take you back in the time machine. Rocky IV, he goes over to Russia, and that crowd was against them. But then they started to turn, and then Rocky said after the match, he grabbed the microphone, he goes, if I could change, and then the Russian interpreter goes, hey, skibbity gotcha, then you can change. Hey, skibbity, everybody can change. So if I can change towards Ole Miss, you have to win this game because you're knocking out my Final Four team. If they win this game, I'm doing the full Rocky IV, and I'm all of a sudden becoming a huge fan.
I doubt that Ole Miss fans will start cheering for Tim, though, if he does that.
No, I feel like his face is like on a dartboard in their locker room. I'm surprised somebody secretly, their social media hasn't reached out saying, can you please root against us? Because it's worked out so well.
It has worked. They've pulled 2 upsets in their first 2 games. They're looking for another.
Okay, so we're on Friday right now. That game's starting at what, a little after 7? This next one at 7:39. We have Kentucky going up against Tennessee. Interesting here, Kentucky has beat them twice this season. Tennessee's coach has said, look, it's not a bad matchup for us. We just haven't played up to the level I know we're capable with in those games. Tennessee favored by 4.5 in this one, though, Tim. Who have you got?
Yeah, interesting, right? Kentucky's won the 2 matchups, yet Tennessee is favored here. I like Kentucky. Now, full disclosure, I had Kentucky go to the Final Four. What I love about this team, Amanda, is they really embody that word team. They've had 6 guys averaging double figures all season long, but they share the basketball. They have assisted on nearly 70% of their buckets in the NCAA Tournament. And Lamont Butler looked much better in game number 2 than he did in game number 1. He's going to be the X factor. He's got the black shirt on. He's got the bad shoulder right now. But he's made some enormous shots in the tournament. Go back to a few years ago at San Diego State. Kentucky's got an interesting sauce. They got older guys, but everyone buys into their role. I think they own Tennessee, and they win this game.
All right, that would be 3-0 this season. It would knock out the Vols, obviously, from the tournament. Let's go back to Atlanta here in the South region. It's Michigan and Auburn. And, the Tigers are heavy favorites here, but they're not playing like that overall number 1 seed that they earned.
No, because Janai Broome is not healthy. There's no other way to say it. He averages 17 points of the season. In 2 NCAA games, he's only averaging 11. He's shooting 40% from the field. I'm going to pick Auburn in this game. Full disclosure, I thought they were going to win the national championship in February. And then Bruce Pearl's team, eyeball test, I was like, ugh, I jumped off that bandwagon. I also picked Alabama to win before the season. I picked Auburn midway season. Now I'm picking Florida. So a lot of SEC love here. The matchup to watch out for is Michigan's got fantastic big guys. Vlad Golden plays down low, and Danny Wolf plays on the perimeter. I wonder, Hassel, who Broome is going to match up with. I think he's going to match up with Golden because he just simply doesn't have that same movement and explosion I've seen earlier in the year. Michigan's going to have a special shooting night, which they're capable of from behind the arc. Both Wolf and Golden have to be sensational for them to win this game. I trust the experience of Auburn. Auburn's starting lineup is almost as old as OKC's starting lineup, and they're the best team in the NBA, so experience pays off. Give me the Tigers.
Final game on Friday, final game of the Sweet 16. We get Purdue going up against Houston. It was interesting. We have a manager here, Tracy. She graduated from Purdue, and I saw her yesterday. She's decked out in Purdue stuff. She goes, I got to wear it now because I don't think I'm going to get to wear it after this.
I don't know. It's basically a home game for them.
Yeah, that is true.
Indianapolis.
Houston favored by 7.5 in this one, though. They've looked remarkable in this tournament. Tim, who have you got?
Yeah, you know, hats off to Tracy. She was a student athlete at Purdue. That's before NIL. I don't know if she was getting money under the table, but she was up on studio, and I picked against Purdue in the last game, and she was actually behind the camera, and she just did this. I was like, does that mean I don't have a job anymore? She goes, hey, you see your contract right here? She started waving it in front of me. I'm picking Houston here. I think Purdue is going to have a great home crowd, but Kelvin Sampson has won 30, I repeat, 30 games each of his last 4 years. This is his most talented offensive team. You remember the old Houston teams? It was like 58, 55. They would win every game. Now all of a sudden they're scoring in the 70s. They could shoot it from deep. I love LJ Cryer there. It's interesting, Kelvin Sampson going back to the great state of Indiana, where he ruined my senior night, Hassel. He was the head coach of Indiana when they beat me on senior night. And how bad was it at Northwestern? The audio system went out during my senior night. So I just walked out of the tunnel, no announcement, with my parents. And my mom had like balloons and stuff. We had no audio. Talk about, I mean, what year is this, for crying out loud? I think Sampson take care of business. And Tracy, okay, I'm up in a little bit. Let's renew this contract, okay? Just because I'm not picking Purdue, don't run away from me, okay? Give me Houston in this spot.
Tim, we appreciate it. I didn't like he just addressed you when he was telling that story. Did you notice that?
Yeah, he acts
Chris
like
and
you're
Amanda.
not here.
He just said Chris. Not appreciative, Tim, so maybe I hope some of your picks fail. Sweet 16 getting underway Thursday and Friday. Make sure to stay up late, pour that coffee. You can watch the games on CBS or stream them on Paramount Plus.
All right, back here on HQ Spotlight, the Sweet 16 is set. Now, prior to the tournament, we were talking about teams that fit the championship mold. If you forgot, which I have a couple of times, that means you're in the top 21 in offensive efficiency, the top 31 in defensive efficiency. Going into the tournament, there were 8 teams that fit the mold this season: Wisconsin, Iowa State, Gonzaga, obviously no longer in the mix, no longer dancing. So we have 5 teams left. You see them there. All the 1 seeds plus Tennessee that still fit that championship mold. We're going to discuss if they can, still have a clear pathway, what we've seen so far, how you guys are feeling. Chip Patterson, Kenzie Brooks here to talk about it. And we were starting with Auburn, the number 1 overall seed. This is a squad that going into the tournament lost 3 of the last 4, So a lot of folks were a little uneasy about them. We saw them in some tight contests in the first 2 rounds. Kenzie, I will start with you. Where are you feeling on Auburn based off of what you saw in rounds 1 and 2 as they're, in the Sweet 16 and trying to make a run here?
It's I go back and forth with them. I don't know if it makes me feel better that they're winning games, playing at their floor. Like, they're winning games. I think we haven't even seen peak Auburn yet. Imagine what they're going to do when Broome really pops off. And the other half of me is like, why haven't they popped off yet? So, like, whatever way you want to turn it, I'm in the situation where regression to the mean is always something I will say. There will be a game where Broome really just takes over. I think he was in a tough situation with Kalkbrenner, who I think very highly of. So going into this specific matchup against Michigan, I think he'll have a lot easier time. Do I think Auburn overall has the easiest path to the Final Four, the national championship? Not necessarily, but definitely a top 2 situation up there with Duke.
Yeah, I would say that if I've got any discomfort, it hasn't necessarily been addressed in a positive way. This Auburn team, slow starts to both of its games. You look up against Alabama State, it's a 1-point game with a minute and a half left. Are we going to see a UMBC? Nah, they put it to bed in the second half. And then the Creighton game as well. That was very competitive. They were trailing at halftime before pulling away. And this is what is concerning, is that you can't get off to these slow starts as the competition gets more difficult and expect that you can win a national championship. And don't get it twisted. The way that Auburn has played basketball this season, winning a national championship is the goal. Getting to the Final Four is the goal. That they cannot get off to slow starts again in the second weekend and expect to make it to San Antonio. But I will throw this last caveat on there. These games, the South Regional, going to be played in Atlanta. That's the airport you fly into when you're going to Auburn, if you didn't know. I think Auburn's going to turn that place into the jungle East Edition, and hopefully the home fans can be able to inspire better starts for the Tigers.
So unlike Auburn, Duke has looked every bit the 1 seed. They won with margin. And I don't even know how many times Cooper Flagg's taken a back seat in a post-game press conference, but Tyrese Proctor certainly stole the show in the last round. Kens, what are we thinking about Duke here getting to the Sweet 16 and moving forward?
We've loved them. Since Selection Sunday, we've looked at Duke and looked at that East region and say, hey, this is just the cakewalk relative to the Final Four. If there's a team, a 1 seed with the easiest shot to get there, we think it's them. We have them a 76% chance to beat Arizona, then likely go on and play Bama, 73% chance to beat them. If you're a 73% chance favorite in an Elite 8 game in our model, like, that's a really good spot to be. By the Elite 8, it's closer to like 60, 62%. To be, we're calling this almost a 10-point game against Alabama. I mean, talk about an edge in that situation. So I do love Duke. I mean, this is just such a complete team. Obviously, they fit that championship mold, and they're top 5 in both of those, efficiency. It's not like they're just barely fitting this mold. They are the poster child of the mold.
Yeah, Cooper Flagg's better now than he was a couple weeks ago. The coaching staff really believes that the time off had allowed the freshmen to be able to reset after the grind of the regular season. So, he almost got, we always see LeBron in the NBA kind of go on his hiatus so he can come back for the playoff run. We have got a renewed and rejuvenated Cooper Flagg, National Player of the Year favorite, just going full speed ahead. And the emergence of Tyrese Proctor, you mentioned him, 13 for 16 from behind the arc. That is going to regress to the mean. But just the fact that he's playing with so much confidence is so important. Now, a lot of national championship runs, when the super team actually gets it done, has a point in that tournament run where somebody who's not the star really takes that step forward. Now, you might remember Justice Winslow, if I'm speaking to Duke fans here, being that kind of player for Duke in the 2015 title run. This is what they wanted to see. Tyrese Proctor in his 3rd year in the program, playing some of his best basketball when it matters the most. Duke comes at you in waves, man. I mean, it is just size, it is length, it is athleticism and raw talent, and that's why the War Machine has been blowing everybody out in this tournament.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that Cooper Flagg was dealing with, a sprained ankle just a couple of weeks ago from that ACC tournament.
NBA players could never, the way he responds.
And we'll see in a year if that translates over, right, to the next level. All right, guys, we got to talk about the Florida Gators because they are in the Sweet 16 for the first time since 2017, trying to get to a Final Four for the first time since 2014. Chip, there's 2, I feel like, theories here if we're looking at the Florida-UConn game, right? Because some folks are saying to be the best, you got to beat the best. It's good that you're battle-tested maybe so early. We're seeing Walter Clayton.
Keep telling yourself this.
I am. I'm going to tell myself this till the cows come home because the Florida disrespect is kind of crazy on the airwaves sometimes. But I get it, Chip, because you're in this tough battle, and Florida, specifically Walter Clayton on defense, is not looking great in that first half against UConn. Where are you at? We'll start with you with Florida moving forward based off of especially the performance you saw against Dan Hurley and UConn, where it really was a nail-biter down to the final seconds, it felt like.
Yeah, I think that was the best bleeping coach in the sport put together a game plan that allowed a team that didn't have as much talent or depth to be able to hang with a true national championship contender. I don't really knock Florida at all. Todd Golden told us in some more explicit language, I'll edit it, but basically when the money was on the table, his guys stepped up. When it was time to go out there and win the game, they delivered that 8-0 run. Walter Clayton with the big shots, Elijah Martin, Will Richard, everybody hitting the floor to get those offensive rebounds after the missed free throws. I come away from it impressed. I think that is a Florida team that got a huge, proud haymaker from the 2-time back-to-back champs and one of the best coaches in the game, and they were able to respond the only way they know how, and that is just to continue to be relentless with all of their depth, with all of their options, and eventually some of those shots were going to fall. So I think that Florida getting over UConn is an incredible confidence boost. I think that the Gators remain to be a team that has the makeup of a national champion. And one final note here, Dan Hurley told us that this Florida team looks like UConn teams that won the title. He admitted it doesn't look like the UConn team that he had this year, but with their depth of bigs, with their experience at the guard position, Dan Hurley almost sounded envious of the roster construction and the team that Todd Golden has put together for the Gators. So if Florida looks like UConn teams of 24 and 23, that means they've got the same ceiling. That's winning it all.
Yeah, I don't knock them for being in a close game with UConn. I've said since Selection Sunday, too, Florida will have the hardest path of the 1 seeds. And I know it wasn't the UConn of the past, but I was like, hey, you're playing the back-to-back national champs. The coach is still there. Like, there's nothing easy about that game. And unfortunately, we just happen to be really high on Maryland and really high on Texas Tech as well. So knowing they likely have to go through both of them to then advance, it just feels like this is a team, and it's not a dink to them, but these teams in their region are going to just wear and tear at them. I think Maryland's alive to win that game, and if not them, I think Texas Tech is alive as well. So as far as the draw they have, it just seems like a tougher road than Duke.
So even with St. John's being out, was the model?
We were always anti the Johnnies, so
okay.
Johnnies.
Okay, I just didn't know. I had to
The metrics, not so high on the Johnnies.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's worth mentioning though. Yeah, that the one of the faces behind Sportsline also is from Baltimore.
Yes,
and so that is. I just need to throw that out there. But okay.
And we have a Gator too, though. So
yes,
we are.
That is true. That is true.
But the ultimate boss is from Baltimore.
Yeah. Yes.
Ken, speaking of metrics here, if we get to go Cougs and Kelvin Sampson in Houston, I know we focus on this year, but they've been a 1 seed the last 3 years, or 2 years plus this year, so 3 straight here. And also they're healthy right now. I don't know if the metrics factor into that right now, but I just certainly feel, speaking of Mull, that they've got everything going. If they can stay healthy, they've got a good shot. Yeah,
we were saying the same exact thing here. It's crazy because Houston obviously was always the defense, and now we're just upgrading their offense game after game. It gets slightly upgraded, and they become bigger favorites and bigger favorites against the other teams that they were going against. So I think Purdue's a team that they will match up really well with. Like you said, as long as they stay healthy, that's what it's about. I think this is an offense that is so underrated to this point. But I have a nice little stat for us that might squash the championship mold stat here. Okay, get a load of this.
Okay, here we go.
No champ since 2004. 2004, which I still had like a pacifier in my mouth just to give context of how long ago that was. If you were not top 12 in week 6 of the AP poll, you did not win a national championship. They were not top 12 in week 6.
That's like a very college football stat, ain't it, Chip? It's like if you weren't ranked this high, you were never getting a shot back then.
I don't care what this team has to offer. Clearly, according to week 6 of the AP poll,
that was a lot of demarcation there. Chip?
Yeah, I'll break out the trapezoid of excellence if y'all want to see how pace goes against net rating, and I can also draw this out. There's lots of different ways that we can pick our champ, but Houston can still get this thing done. Houston can break that trend right there. The issue is going to be whether they're going to get both of these guards going at the same time. LJ Cryer can fill it up from outside. Milos Uzan can go and make plays at the rim, but if they are not both going at the same time, they're going to be pushed. Maybe not by Purdue, but at least by the winner of Kentucky, Tennessee. I think that when you're playing in Indianapolis against all of those teams, Kelvin Sampson's Cougars are going to have it be a little bit of an uphill battle.
So we've gone through all of the teams that are the 1 seeds that still fit this mold, that are still in it, of course. Now, the one lone team that is not on the 1 line, but still technically fits the mold, is Tennessee.
Yes.
So, Kenz, I'm curious, how does the model and where are you guys at on Tennessee with what Gainey and Chaz Lanier, what they are doing and what you've seen so far? And we have this really great matchup on deck for Friday as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's certainly possible. We like them against Kentucky, give them the 60% chance to win, and we only make them 4-point dogs against Houston if it comes down to that in the Elite 8. So all, very feasible upsets for Tennessee here. I'll be honest, a team we didn't really talk about too much as values for us. I think they ended up seated right where they should be seated as far as our percent chance to make the Final Four to win the national championship. Texas Tech is the only non-1 seed ahead of them in our eyes, but they're chugging along. I truly, no notes for Tennessee right now. That's what I have to say.
Tennessee rounds out the 5 teams that I thought could go on a run when we talked about this mold before the tournament started. Oh, and would you look at it? Those are the only 5 teams that ended up making it through to the second weekend. Here's the thing about the Vols. They have, with both Chaz Lanier and Zakai Ziegler, an ability to be able to trade paint with a Kentucky team that it has lost to twice already. Now, everybody's going to say it's hard to beat a team 3 times, but one of the reasons why they have 2 losses to the Wildcats this year is not being able to hold up their end of the bargain offensively. To be able to see Chaz Lanier start to really get hot there in the opening weekend, that is something that Tennessee has to have if they're going to be able to get past Kentucky. And then if they can go on to play Houston or Purdue, then things might open up a little bit, in my opinion. This first matchup for Tennessee is going to be everything when it comes to their Final Four hopes.
All right, Chip, Kenz, we certainly appreciate it. thanks for playing along. I feel like whenever I talk about Florida, I got to take a couple of deep breaths, you know?
Yeah,
It's been a stressful couple of weeks. I thought I was going to literally lose my mind during the UConn game, but we appreciate it, guys. All right, the Sweet 16, it is set Thursday and Friday. You can watch all the action on CBS and, of course, streaming on Paramount Plus as well.
All right, so we know about how chalky this Sweet 16 is. That makes it interesting to rank these 16 teams. I mean, I think most people would put Arkansas at the bottom, the only double-digit seed.
Fun.
What's that?
It's fun watching a story like that. And Matt Norlander, by the way, we're about to talk to him. Talk to not just John Calipari, but his family, his wife and daughter, about what they've been through. Because I was listening to the podcast because he's my favorite, so I highly recommend going and finding that article.
Would you like to do this segment?
I probably could, but no, you can talk to Matt.
Matt, hello. Let's rank them. Let's start at the very top, because I feel like going into the tournament, how hot Florida was. A lot of people, even though Duke was the favorite, a lot of people had Florida #1. How do you rank them right now?
I guess I'll do the segment with Hassel. Okay, fair enough. Let's do it. No, I have Duke #1. Let's be clear as we do this off the top. I am ranking the teams based on how good I think they are in totality. This is not going to align with what I have picked in my bracket because, as you well know, a single game situation can lead, especially in the NCAA tournament, to the better team losing. I will have Duke #1 as the most talented team in the field. It also has looked the best of any team in the tournament through the first weekend. So Duke is #1, and I'll just roll off. I've got all 4 1 seeds at the top. I've got Duke #1. I've got Houston #2. I've got Auburn 3. And then I've got Florida 4. So that's my 1, 2, 3, 4 ranking the Sweet 16 teams. All the other 1 seeds got themselves into a semi-interesting situation in the first weekend. Duke, meantime, was just dominant and put itself on a tier to itself. So obviously we're going to have Duke #1.
When you look at all of these matchups, every spread is single digits. Duke has the most. I mean, they're 9.5-point favorite. Of those number 4 1 seeds that you have, 1, 2, 3, 4, beginning with Duke and ending with Florida, which one is the most vulnerable, do you think, this weekend?
Well, I do think it is Florida. I know you used the terminology this weekend. I guess I'll just look ahead to the Sweet 16 matchups in general. I did have Maryland beating Florida on Selection Sunday. Haven't changed that pick, and so I'll stick with that, in particular because Maryland does have a starting 5, the Crab 5, that averages more points per game than any starting 5 in the country. And we'll see if that lack of depth actually winds up mattering not against the Gators. I do like the matchup overall. So on face value, I would say Florida, but I do have to note that Janai Broome is only averaging 11 points in the NCAA tournament. Auburn's going to go up against the Michigan team with a couple of bigs, and there's reason to claim that Auburn might be sitting. And even though it's the #1 overall seed, then maybe Auburn's got a little bit of wariness. Houston's going to play Purdue in Purdue's backyard, by the way, and in Indianapolis, so there's something to that as well. But Florida is my pick.
So you're ranking the top 16 teams here from 1 to 16, and the top 4 are 1 seeds. The next 2 are 2 of the 2 seeds, but then you have a 3 seed ahead of a 2. Why do you like Texas Tech a little bit more right now than Michigan State?
Yeah, I go Bama 5, Tennessee 6, Texas Tech 7. Texas Tech has been a top 10 team at KenPom for 2 months now. The Red Raiders are shooting with alacrity and have really displayed a lot of talent, a lot of capability. Also have JT Toppin, borderline first-team All-American, if not an outright first-team All-American at this point. Grant McCaslin's team is my amended pick to make the Final Four. I had St. John's, didn't work out for me. My other 3 Final Four teams are still alive. So yes, I go Texas Tech right now as the better team than Michigan State, and that is an opinion backed up by advanced metrics. Hassel.
Let's go just outside the top 10 now to a team that I thought BYU was maybe the most underseeded team of the tournament at a 6 seed, the way they've been playing. You talk about metrics, and I mean, they've been a top 5 team really for the last several weeks. You have them just outside, though, at 11. Do you think they could play above that potential this weekend?
I do, and when putting this together, so I've got Maryland 9, Kentucky 10, BYU 11. These 3 teams in particular, it's just this much. It's daylight between them, barely any daylight. BYU, I'm going to be there in Newark. They play Alabama. They can absolutely beat Alabama. They've been on fire. The only time they've been tripped up in the past 6 weeks was against Houston, my national title pick in the Big 12 tournament. So Yeah, they have been awesome. I think they are a very live possibility to make the Final Four that people really aren't talking about that much, but they have looked that good. I've got them reluctantly sitting there at 11, right behind Kentucky, which has been good, and that's interesting. It wasn't intentional, but Kentucky's coach this season was BYU's coach last season, and Mark Pope, and I even have Kentucky narrowly ahead of Maryland.
I know that you know what has happened with Tim Doyle and Ole Miss. You have them ranked 15th out of the 16 remaining teams. Are you worried that they could be using you as motivation, just like they're using Tim this weekend?
I mean, they're welcome to do so, but this is more reflective of just how strong this Sweet 16 field is. Ole Miss is a quality team that's capable of beating Michigan State. There's no doubt about it. I've got Arizona 13. I've got Purdue 14. I've got Ole Miss 15, and then I've got Arkansas, which I think is understandably 16th overall, although Arkansas fans are just embracing the fact that everyone thinks their team is going to lose again. We'll see. But between Malik Dia and Sean Padula, Chris Beard's got himself a really nice squad. This is one of the stronger Sweet 16 fields that we've ever seen, obviously. Just by nature, you can see my order here from 9 to 16, but by nature of the fact that we've just not had we've never had a situation in which the Sweet 16 was entirely comprised of four power conferences and all the schools coming from those leagues. So it's not a slight Ole Miss. It's more of a reflection of where we are with the Sweet 16. Very excited to see, and I certainly hope, Hassel, I think you'd agree with me. We didn't have mid-majors break through. So if this is going to be the situation and we're looking forward to all of these matchups, then we're going to need the basketball gods to deliver. Okay, we got the great Queen moment, and there were about 4 or 5 other games in the first 4 days of the first and second round where we had some good games, but we needed a little more. We need a little more than that, so it's time to come up big. Thursday, Friday, and specifically, we got 8 Sweet 16 games. I'm going to at least need a 50% hit rate on tremendous games and one or two more buzzer beaters. Is that too much to ask?
No, it's not too much. Let's get it. Let's get it. Matt Norlander ranking the 16 teams remaining in the Sweet 16, and a very brand new Ion College Basketball podcast just dropped. Matt Norlander and Gary Parrish previewing the Sweet 16. And we've got it on CBS and Paramount Plus Thursday and Friday. Thursday, games start just after 7. Doubleheaders both nights, Thursday and Friday.
Now, Chris, you wouldn't know this because you've been married for like 1,000 years. It's hard to be friends with your ex.
Yeah, I don't have any exes. So good.
Jimmy Butler is going to see his ex tonight. We're going to talk about that on the other side. Well, the Sweet 16 is set, and here is what we know. We got 7 teams coming out of the SEC. That's the most by a conference ever. It's also the first time since 2007 we have no 11 seeds or lower in the Sweet 16. Some calling it a tame year in terms of the madness. So we're going to do a little redo, a little reset, if you will, with our agent of chaos who joins us now, our Chip Patterson. College basketball, college football, you name it, he talks about it. All right, Chip, we've got your bracket. We're working from the Sweet 16 forward here, so we're going to do a little reshuffle here in the mind of Chip Patterson. So let's go ahead and get started in the South bracket, where we see Auburn and Michigan facing off there in the Sweet 16. A lot of people are kind of on the fence when it comes to Auburn. Either you're all in or you're on the fence. What do you feel like when it comes to that Auburn-Michigan game?
This is an Auburn team that has gotten off to some slow starts, Haley. Against Alabama State, you've got a little bit of panic. And even against Creighton, you were very much in a dogfight until pulling away late. This Michigan team, the Big Ten tournament champs, a group that just pulled away from Texas A&M in its round of 32 game. Michigan is used to winning these close games. Michigan will make you pay for those slow starts. I think that Dusty May, who, he can coach a little bit in this NCAA tournament. I think that Michigan is very much poised to be able to pull off the upset, where they will be an absolute road environment in Atlanta against Auburn fans that are going to try to turn that into the jungle. Then in the bottom half of that bracket, I do think that Michigan State is going to be able to get over against Ole Miss. This Ole Miss team was just lights out shooting from behind the arc. And then what an Elite Eight matchup we might get there with Michigan State and Michigan.
Oh, I know the state of Michigan celebrating that one. We'll get to that matchup in just a minute, but let's work down the bracket. get down into the West, where it is weird to call one of Coach Calipari's teams a Cinderella team, Chip, but that's what we're looking at when it comes to Arkansas. They get Florida in the All-SEC draw there. What are you feeling when it comes to the Razorbacks and the Gators?
I think that Arkansas is right now playing some of its best basketball, and that what they accomplished in terms of the quality of wins, beating Kansas in the first round and taking out St. John's in the second round, that what Arkansas has accomplished is arguably the most impressive path so far. So think about the confidence that is running through this team right now. This team that is now fully starting to get back to the health where it needs to be. An Arkansas team that understands exactly the way they need to win against the best teams in the country. Compare that to what Texas Tech has done, UNC, Wilmington, Drake. I know I sound like a football analyst again, Haley, but they ain't played nobody. And so I just think that Arkansas enters this Sweet 16 with a lot of confidence to be able to take down Texas Tech and be able to get to an Elite Eight matchup with Florida, where, look, this Arkansas team is going to have a lot of experience playing against SEC opponents. Will they be able to keep it going? We will see.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I thought Coach Cal's comments on the transfer portal interesting as well, as he's trying to manage a Sweet 16 run. He's also worried about kids going in the transfer portal. It is a weird time in college athletics for sure. Let's push over to the east side of the bracket, Chip. A lot of concerns when it came to Alabama in this tournament. I know a lot of conversation has been they play to the talent that they are playing against, and that could be a positive or a negative. We also know Grant Nelson has not been operating on 100% there. So in the matchup, they get BYU in the Sweet 16. Chip, this might make a couple of Tide fans unhappy here. Why the nod for BYU over Alabama here?
Because in St. Mary's, they had a team that could not trade paint with them. And in BYU, they have a Cougars squad that is more than happy to be able to go blow for blow. I think BYU has benefited from the fact that in outlasting Wisconsin, they got a look at the kind of game that needs to be played to beat Alabama. And in winning that game with just enough defensive stops. It was not a great defensive game for BYU, but just enough defensive stops at the right times. That's what gave the Cougars the ability to advance on into the Sweet 16. This is a BYU team that did not even win a single game in the NCAA tournament last year. One and done, taken out by Duquesne. Well, now I think that when they arrive in Newark, they're going to be looking to carry over some of that rhythm. And the thing I like about BYU is they've got a really, really deep rotation. We've got all these depth concerns about Alabama and where's Grant Nelson at? What happens if we get some foul trouble? BYU can come at you in waves. A lot of different guys can heat up from behind the arc. And so that's why I think that BYU might be able to pull off the upset against the Crimson Tide, setting up a matchup with the Duke team that will have its hands full with Arizona. But, Haley, I just saw those Blue Devils in person. They're just too much.
I don't want to assume here, and we'll get to the Duke Blue Devils in just a minute, but I do want to shout out Kevin Young, the head coach at BYU, and the job he has done in this first year. It was a weird transition for him, but he has certainly taken this team to new heights. Chip, let's talk about a 1 seed in this tournament, maybe kind of flying under the radar a little bit, depending on who you ask, in Houston. Of course, we know them for their defense, and they're going to need a lot of it as they take on Purdue. It's going to be a home game, though, it'll feel like, for the Boilermakers, Chip. They're playing in Indianapolis, right in their backyard there. So for a Houston team that is as good as they are this year, they earned a 1 seed for a reason. Talk to me about this matchup here and how you're feeling.
Oh, elite guard play. And that's going to be really where this one is going to hinge, because we know that Braden Smith, the Purdue guard, who's just played for so long in so many NCAA tournament games, everything's going to run through him. He's going to be the engine of this offense, but he's going to be going up against a backcourt that will determine whether Houston's run ends in Indianapolis against the Boilermakers or maybe goes even farther. And, of course, I'm talking about LJ Cryer and Milos Uzan, because Cryer showed us in the second round win against Gonzaga, he is still a walking bucket. There have been times this season where it feels like he's been a little milk carton MIA, but to go out there, heat up from outside, just shows you exactly what the firepower that's there. Milos Uzan is a little bit of a different player, someone who can get downhill, make plays at the rim, and how important is that going to be against a Purdue defense that has been very leaky on the inside? The 2-point defensive numbers were horrendous for Purdue in the Big Ten Conference season. Not only do they miss having Zach Edey back there to protect the rim, but they don't have a lot lot of options to be able to really provide that kind of defense on the inside. So I think Milos Uzan getting downhill, LJ Cryer heating up from outside. That's the 1-2 punch you need to overcome that disadvantage that they'll be facing playing in Indianapolis.
That sets up a Houston-Tennessee matchup in the next round. We'll get there in a minute. Again, we are redoing the Sweet 16 on of Chip Patterson's bracket. So, Chip, that then takes us to the Elite Eight. So I'm going to kind of let you go off here now that we've got our Elite Eight matchups going here, starting with Michigan State. What is Chip Patterson like in this redo?
Well, look, I know it's hard to keep beating up on the same team, but there's a reason why, and it's Michigan State is a very, very bad matchup for Michigan. They've got the size to be able to battle against those Twin Towers, and they've got better guard play than what Michigan has, especially with Jace Richardson's star continuing to rise. I've got the Spartans getting back to the Final Four for the first time since 2019. Florida-Arkansas is just going to be a quality battle. You know, one thing that hearing from Dan Hurley coming out of the loss to Florida, he felt UConn played its best game possible. Florida still wins because they are just better. The Gators are that kind of team. I think that they would win against Arkansas. That one might get lopsided, honestly. Duke and BYU in Newark, very, very tough for a BYU team that I think is going to see in Duke, just like in Alabama, a group that can go out there and score 90-some-odd points. And so I think that's where it's not just Cooper Flagg. It's what you're getting out of Tyrese Proctor. It's what you're getting out of Con Knipple. We've got the Blue Devils advancing, and then the exact opposite, Haley. Duke, BYU, it's going to be decided in the 80s and 90s. Houston, Tennessee, it's going to be 58-57. But in this matchup, I do give the Vols the slight edge because I talked about the guards for Houston. Well, what Tennessee has was Zakai Ziegler and Chaz Lanier, I think is actually a little bit better in terms of scoring potential, big shot ability. That gives us Florida, Michigan State on one side, edge to the Gators. Duke, Tennessee, I will go with the team that has the higher offensive ceiling. I have these two teams. They were not the 1 and 2 seeds overall. They were the 2 and the 4 according to the committee, but I do have 2 1 seeds in my title game.
All right, I was going to say 50% SEC Final Four certainly lived up to the hype when we talked about how competitive the SEC was all season. I know a lot of people in the building, as you well know, are going to love this matchup as well for the national championship. So you've got Walter Clayton and the Florida Gators on one side, Cooper Flagg and the Duke Blue Devils on the other side. Who the heck wins this matchup, Chip?
I apologize to Jacqueline, Jake, and all my chomps out there, but this one's going to be the Duke Blue Devils. This is a group that is so uniquely locked in on both sides of the ball right now. The players that they brought in from the transfer portal to join Cooper Flagg, you know, players like Sion James, players like Malik Brown, you know, they were built understanding that they're not out here to get points. They are out here to get stops. They're out here to get assists. They are out here to be able to set Duke up to be able to go and win a national championship. I just think that the two performances that they put together, you know, they weren't playing heavyweights against, you know, Mount St. Mary's and a Baylor team that's been inconsistent. That was a 44-point win and a 22-point win. I just don't understand with the way that they've been rolling, how you could be more impressed with anybody else. They look in this tournament, Haley, like UConn looked on the way to its back-to-back national championships where they won 12 straight games by a double-digit margin. I think we have a UConn-like run here for Duke where they might just blow through the entire path on the way to cutting down nets in San Antonio.
Yeah, I just know somewhere all of our Florida crew, you shouted out there, maybe not happy about that result, but hey, Duke has been fantastic all year. We'll see if Cooper Flagg gets that national championship. Our Chip Patterson joining us here on HQ, redoing the Sweet 16 and on as March Madness continues. Don't forget the Sweet 16 action picks back up this Thursday. We'll see BYU and Alabama, Maryland and Florida, among other games there. You can catch all the action on the March Madness Live app.
Well, the men's Sweet 16 features 4 coaches who are in their first season with their current programs. Dusty May at Michigan, John Calipari at Arkansas, Mark Pope at Kentucky, and Kevin Young at BYU. For more, I'm joined by CBS Sports senior college basketball writer Matt Norlander. Matt, we're down to 16 and how sweet it is. 4 of these teams, though, have coaches in year 1 with their current program. So my first question to you is which one of these coaches and which one of those runs has been most improbable in your mind?
Well, for most improbable, I think it's BYU and Kevin Young. And the reason why is Dusty May had made a Final Four previously and loaded up pretty well in the portal a season ago. Mark Pope being at Kentucky. Now, he didn't have a single point returning, but it is Kentucky, so I give them a little bit of a slight edge there. Calipari has done this plenty of times before, and Calipari had a preseason top 20 team. Now, there's been bumps along the road. BYU under Kevin Young was expected to maybe be a tournament team and maybe be a team that could be, in that middle tier of the Big 12. But getting to this point already, this is a program that's a year ahead of schedule. I fully anticipate BYU to be one of the 5 to 7 most discussed teams in college basketball next season. And the reason why is BYU is bringing in A.J. DeBansa, who's the #1 recruit incoming to college hoops next season and will be an electrifying player. I do anticipate, although this stuff isn't guaranteed, this is why the tournament's amazing, there's no guarantee that even with the #1 pick, BYU will have a big run. Consider that Rutgers had 2 top 5 picks on its roster this season and didn't even make the tournament. But the point is, Kevin Young's done a wonderful job in year 1, has them ahead of the pace, and he's the most improbable of the 4 first-year coaches in the dance with their new teams.
Now, Matt, this year's tournament has been relatively chalk, with all 4 1 seeds still standing, all but 1 2 seed remaining. But 10 seed Arkansas upset their way to the round of 16, joining a few lower seeded schools trying to make some noise. So which low seed has the best chance to pull off a Sweet 16 upset?
Well, I'm going to stick with what I've had since Selection Sunday, which feels like certainly more than 2 weeks ago, even though it's not. And that is Maryland over Florida. I had that matchup in my bracket. It still has obviously come to pass. And I have the Terps beating the Gators specifically because of the size, the shooting, the dynamism from the Crab 5. I like what Maryland has, and Florida got a good push from UConn. They had been playing so hot heading into the tournament, but overall, I like Kevin Willard's team. Although I have to admit, and talk about the side story that's happening with Maryland. Now we'll see if it actually matters when it comes to playing the game. I don't even know if it will. But Kevin Willard has been attached as a potential candidate to the open Villanova job. He has spoken about this publicly as recently as Tuesday on the radio in terms of what else he's looking for from the Maryland program. So you have an unusual story here where you have a team that was a good team, maybe making a slightly unexpected Sweet 16 run. In the meantime, no one really knows if that coach is going to be at the program next season or not. Nevertheless, I'm sticking with my pick, and I'll have Maryland over Florida in San Francisco on Thursday.
Hey, Maryland already had one of the moments of the tournament with that Queen buzzer beater to get into the Sweet 16. We'll see if that run continues. But as we mentioned, too, all 4 1 seeds still intact. You got Duke, Florida, Auburn, and Houston. So which 1 seed, in your eyes, has the easiest path to the Final Four?
I do think it's Duke, and part of it's because Duke has looked by far the best of any team that's in the Sweet 16. I mean, it has just been romping opponents. Obviously, one of them was a 16 seed. We get all that. But also, Duke has the shortest trip to the East Regionals compared to Arizona, BYU, and Alabama. All those teams I actually think are capable of making the Final Four out of this region. I truly do. But Houston's got to go play 3 schools. Or they only have to play 2 of them if it gets to the Elite 8. But Kentucky, Tennessee, and Purdue, those are all nearby schools, drivable. Not the case with Houston. Auburn's been a little bit shaky, and it's got Michigan waiting, maybe Michigan State. Could have a league foe in Ole Miss waiting there. And then in the bottom left, you've got Florida, and I let you know that I thought Florida might not get past its next game. And then on the bottom half, Texas Tech has been a top 10 team in the sport from a predictive metric standpoint for about 2 months. So on balance, overall, I'd say Duke has the supposed easiest path, but I do think we're in for a stunner or two Thursday and Friday. We've had a little too much quietness on this bracket front. I think we're due for a little more madness.
It'll be interesting. Duke, of course, also the tallest team in this year's tournament with a couple of lottery picks playing on that roster. Matt, what is your most confident pick to win this year's national title?
Well, it hasn't changed. It's still Houston. The Cougars have been one of the most consistent programs over the past 3 or 4 seasons in the sport. We've talked about this frequently on the Eye on College Basketball podcast. What Kelvin Sampson's done has been amazing. And the reason why I'm so confident is that Houston entered the tournament as the best 3-point shooting team in the field. Now, normally Houston has an okay offense, but relies on its defense. Well, now it has a really, really good defense again, and by far, the most efficient offense Kelvin Sampson's ever had. So because of those factors, and it got past Gonzaga, a quality team that rated high in the predictive metrics, it got past them in the second round. I'm going to stick with my title pick. I'm still most confident that Houston will cut down the nets. And I think in some part that is aided by the fact that Houston has been able to get top seeds recently, has a lot of tournament collective experience. I think that'll pay off. You get them into San Antonio. Houston isn't so far away. from the Alamo Dome, and I think that'll be a big time factor. Give me the Cougs.
Hey, Houston is consistent, and so is Matt. Keep him with his pick. CBS Sports senior college basketball writer Matt Norlander, thanks so much for the insight.
Thank you.
The men's NCAA tournament resumes with the Sweet 16 on Thursday and Friday. You can watch on CBS or stream on Paramount Plus, and we'll have you covered with highlights and analysis right here on CBS Sports HQ.